China wants their country to look like this. But in reality, it looks a lot more like this. We're going to move left to right, from India to Taiwan in the South China Sea. Oh, by the way, the Chinese government requires its map makers to use this algorithm that intentionally scrambles the latitude and longitude coordinates of their maps, all in the name of national security. This makes it hard for people like me to work with Chinese maps.
Wow.
But we were able to hack through these maps and line them up with our own mapping system.
Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name's Ryan and I'm a former Royal Marine from the United Kingdom. Today we're going to be reacting to Johnny Harris, why everyone's mad about China's new map. Fantastic channel, guys. As always, original link will be in the description. Thanks to those channels for allowing us to, give our comments to it. So without further ado, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. Drop a like for the video. It really is going to help. And I'll see you in the comments, troops. Let's get into it. And here we go.
On August 28, 2023, the Chinese government released a map. The map did a surprisingly good job at making a lot of other countries angry.
Several countries have rejected China's new standard map.
It's a violation of the law. So that's where I put that map.
The release of this map also was met with a huge event and announcement within China. This featured the state media launching into a commentary on the importance of maps.
地图是国家版图最主要的表现形式。
Followed by a warning to the people that maps that have errors can cause, quote, great harm to society.
危害了我们祖国的这个统一。
I mean, before we get started in that, most maps aren't 100% accurate anyway in terms of how they represent certain countries. So for a long time on modern maps, the most up-to-date maps always kind of underrepresented the size of Russia and Africa, for instance, and overrepresented their own country in terms of actual size. So I think mapping still gets that wrong, generally speaking.
So let's look at what's going on with this map, why countries around the region are condemning it, and why China had to go to such great lengths to tell people that there's nothing wrong with these maps, and that in fact, a map like this is key to national unity. To do this, I'm going to need a high-res version of this map. Luckily, the Chinese government has me covered.
地图是国家版图最主要的表现形式。
发布了矢量地图，更好地满足专业用户。
I want to show you what this map says, and show you how China uses cartography to assert and project power in its region. Because as clean as this map looks, within it, there's actually a lot going on. Border tug-of-wars, fake islands, a 10th dash on a line in the ocean.
Yeah, these fake islands are massively scrambling with people. When you think about like South China Sea and stuff like that, Philippines especially, they're just popping up these makeshift islands. You know, I want to say they're built in the same way as the little mini islands in Dubai are created. But these are creating like huge military installment islands and just plonking them next to their neighbors and saying, this is our land, our territory, encroaching on the other people's territories. It's crazy.
Barbed wire wrapped clubs and proxy wars. It's the perfect example of how maps aren't just maps. They're tools of national power.
That's so true. China's war on maps. This is going to be good, man.
I don't like the feeling of being spied on. And like all of us, I am spied on all of the time.
All of the time, especially United States and England, we are literally spied on. You can't go anywhere without there being a bloody camera.
Not just by governments, but by corporations, by people who want to make money off of my information. And that brings me to this quick pause in our video to talk about our sponsor, Incogni. Incogni is a personal information removal service. I don't like the feeling of being spied on. I don't think any of us do, but that use this data to like put you on these people search sites so people can find your information. Health insurance companies will sometimes buy some of this data so that they can use like your web browsing history to like jack up your health insurance bill. And
that's
perhaps
crazy.
most annoyingly, it's spam. I mean, my phone was constantly exploding with like random robocalls. I got all these phishing scams all of the time. Like my information was everywhere and it was blowing up my phone and my inbox. I mean, there's no end to the shenanigans that corporations will do to make money off of you and your information. No longer. Luckily, Incogni exists, and I am back on, and having links in the description. The government of China wants their country to look like this. But in reality, it looks a lot more like this. We're going to move left to right, from India to Taiwan in the South China Sea. Oh, by the way, the Chinese government requires its map makers to use this algorithm that intentionally scrambles the latitude and longitude coordinates of their maps, all in the name of national security. This makes it hard for people like me to work with Chinese maps. But we were able to hack through these maps and line them up with our own mapping systems, which is how we're able to make this video. Okay, with that, let's get started.
Johnny Harris is so cool,
Kashmir,
man.
A region that is already heavily disputed between India and Pakistan. The map shows that all of this section is a part of China, and indeed, China controls it. But India claims that this actually belongs to them. It's the source of tense conflict. Both countries are building stuff in this region. Roads, communication towers, airfields, everything to be ready in case a full-blown conflict breaks out. Troops from both sides face each other in a standoff at this line, the line of actual control. That's really what it's called. It loosely marks the border between these two massive countries.
Yeah, they're always fighting each other, guys. Day to day, soldiers fighting in Kashmir. Like, they've got, people think like India isn't like that operationally experienced, but the guys and the girls who get deployed to Kashmir are fighting all the time, okay? They are pretty experienced despite the fact that they're not going on foreign operations and stuff. They're fighting an awful lot in the Kashmir area, and it's terrible that's even taking place. We created that as well a long time ago.
A border that was never really agreed upon. Because remember where we are here. We're in the Himalayas, the tallest mountains on Earth. Drawing lines and controlling territory here just doesn't work super well. But both sides want to exert control, even here in the high mountains, especially in these important trade regions. These are two nuclear countries, and so they've agreed to not use firearms up here, no guns. So instead, when conflict breaks out, it looks more like a medieval battle, with barbed wire wrapped clubs and fence posts.
You see this happening all the time.
The most recent clash was just in 2020, right here near Ladakh. 20 Indian soldiers and 4 Chinese soldiers were killed.
Indian and Chinese soldiers fought on disputed land using stones and bamboo poles, and around 24 people died.
It's not the greatest way to die, is it? Like, with a bamboo pole. I mean, I'm laughing, but it's not, is it?
As you go down the border between India and China, there are several more of these pockets of disputed land in the Himalayas. As we head east, we'll hit Nepal, and I have to mention that there was recently a leaked government report out of Nepal that asserts that China is encroaching into Nepal's sovereign territory, building stuff with no permission on...
You know, we see this happening time and time again. China's got a massive influence in certain areas in Africa, and how it works is they'll come in and they'll build the infrastructure, no problem, but you'll be indebted to them for 50, 60, 100 years. Not going to be able to pay it back. They're pretty much taking control due to the fact that you're in debt to them, and these countries can't pay them back. So they are a force to be reckoned with, but they're doing it with a very bullying nature, all right? They're going around bullying countries, and the fact that Nepal, look at the size of it, man, on this map here. Tiny little country in regards to itself, and yeah, it's wrong what they're doing, guys. I don't care what anyone says.
Nepal's side of the border here in the Humla district. Nepal actually didn't want this report to come out. They have to walk a fine line being sandwiched between these two behemoth countries, and a big part of that means staying on China's good side. A few years ago, I was up here shooting an episode of Vox Borders, and the locals told me that the Chinese military didn't respect...
That's a cool tash what he has there. Oh man, need to get a look at that again. Look at that tash, like Burt Reynolds, isn't he? Smoking the Bandit.
They didn't respect the border. They kind of did whatever they wanted, which is why I wasn't even allowed to get up to the border fence between these two countries. It's an eerie feeling, being so close to a country that is so serious about projecting its power to its neighbors. Anyway, let's keep going east, where we'll hit another landlocked country in the Himalayas, Bhutan. The border here continues to make an effort to divide these countries in a rugged, glacier-filled expanse. Back in 2006, China quietly pressured Bhutan to give them this big chunk of mountain territory, and Bhutan conceded. They didn't really have a choice.
Yeah, what's Bhutan gonna do?
And so while they kind of keep it hush-hush, China is reminding the world that they actually control this part of Bhutan. It's theirs now. China's using the same playbook in different parts of Bhutan, blurring this northern border as they encroach south. In 2020, China claimed that they actually own this part of Bhutan, a forested nature sanctuary. But strangely, this official map doesn't show that this area is inside of China's borders. Maybe it will next year. The most strategically important part of China's claim on Bhutan is here. This little strip of land gives us a better idea of why China is squeezing the border of this tiny country. If you zoom out, you'll see where we are. Right here at this vital choke point between these two rivals, India and China.
So it's like a transport link, potentially?
This thin corridor where India connects to its eastern states. Some call this the chicken neck. The map asserts that China owns this part of Bhutan, the Doklam Plateau, which provides them a perfect military vantage point over the chicken neck, India's critical corridor. This would make India vulnerable in the case of an active conflict. Oh, and their claim is not just on the map. Satellite imagery analyzed by Reuters shows that China is building roads and settlements and structures on this sovereign territory of Bhutan, enhancing their strategic military position and fortifying their claim on the map.
It's wrong. It is wrong.
These border shenanigans in Bhutan are considered a proxy for tension between China and India. Bhutan, like Nepal, is just sandwiched in the middle.
You know, if it wasn't for videos from Johnny Harris, you wouldn't know that half of this stuff is going on. And China is asserting the dominance within these regions wrongfully, even changing maps, like he says, just to show the world who, like people like me and you, if you were none the wiser to this, would just automatically assume that that is their land, that it's to be taken. I guess that's why they're doing it for. If it's out of sight, out of mind, or in sight, out of mind, in this case, i.e. the maps, you're just not going to question it. So by people not questioning it and bullying little countries such as Bhutan, you're not gonna, if they're not gonna say no, then they are expanding their dominance slowly but surely. But if they keep on doing that every single year, then China's going to have an awful lot of land that they've claimed illegitimately from not just countries like Bhutan, but all over the world. More predominantly in the China Sea and stuff, but within this area specifically near Bhutan and Nepal, it's crazy to think that this is actually taking place.
Satellite images of the Chinese incursions in Bhutan, where China has built roads and barracks on the undisputed territory of Bhutan.
Okay, let's keep moving on. Next to Bhutan, China's map shows that all of this land are within its borders. They now call it South Tibet, but all of this territory belongs to India. It's full of Indian citizens. India's claim to this land relies on this 890-kilometer borderline that a British representative drew in 1913 in partnership with a representative from Tibet who agreed to the line. But China says this isn't legitimate. They own Tibet now, and they never authorized this line dividing Tibet from India. So on their map, they assert that all of this belongs to China. And to take it a step further, they're actually renaming stuff on their maps in this region, from mountain peaks to rivers and cities, showing us how China wants to claim and standardize every corner of its country, exerting control and influence even in these remote places. Now, India is not standing by and letting this happen. To counter this, the Indian government is spending $500 million to build roads and develop hundreds of villages with the goal of solidifying their claim to this land.
It only puts the people in danger, though, the people that are actually living there. So to solidify their claim to the land, they're actually putting people within these villages. But what happens if China was to invade, or, doing what they're doing forcefully is going to put these people at risk anyway, even if it's just a feeling of being at risk. It's bad enough living there without the fear of an invasion of some sort. China's pretty dominant within their cause, really. They really do want to take over a lot of the places, and solidify their influence. It's scary to think that they're doing that, I think, personally.
As we head east, let me mention that during the pandemic, China has been building a fence along this border with Myanmar, mostly to keep people and illicit goods out of China. This border has always been porous. People who share culture and language would cross back and forth, informally trading, but this fence has totally changed that.
Terrible.
And people are angry. I've considered doing an entire video on this border fence and how it's disturbing and affecting life here. If that's interesting to you, please let me know in the comments.
Yeah, do it, man.
So while this isn't a disputed territory, it is another example of China's increased effort to tighten its control on every corner of its land.
Wow.
Okay, now we've arrived to the ocean. The part of the...
This is where it gets busy, guys. Trust me. This is Honestly, you could do a whole video on this as well.
Map that gets a little wild.
This is crazy.
The
South
government
China.
map actually makes it look simple. All of the water inside of this dashed line is China's, but the reality actually looks like this. This is what's known as the 9-dash line, and it was effectively a hand-drawn boundary by the Chinese government in the 1940s. It's not a precise border, it wasn't agreed upon by the countries here, and nor is it legal, at least according to the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague, who calls the 9-dash line lawless, because it clearly cuts through the waters that international law says belong to these neighboring countries, and that's how you get this jumble of all these lines. But, as superpowers do, China ignores all of this because they can. And they continue to operate as...
Yeah, because look at who they're next to. Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei, Philippines. You know, they're allowed to get away with it. So they're encroaching closer on these borders by building little pockets of land off that. I believe they've got a 200-mile exclusion zone or 200-mile right to... that ocean from their coast, I believe. Don't quote me on that. It's something like that, though. And China just basically goes, nah, we're not listening to that. We're gonna crack our own. So them lines are a true representation of just how bizarre it is over there.
As if this entire ocean, which by the way is replete with fish and fossil fuels, as well as militarily strategic islands and important trade routes, all of it is theirs. This has created active conflicts with neighboring countries because for China, these aren't just lines on a map. China has been pumping sand onto tiny reefs to create islands where there were none. Then, they build a military outpost on these newly created islands.
Sovereign territory right there.
In the last decade, they've built dozens of these outposts throughout the South China Sea. And you can see that these militarized islands are right inside the waters that the world has agreed belong to these other countries.
Yeah. And no one's doing nothing about it. That's the problem. It's just like, well, just let them crack on.
The Chinese Navy also steps in, patrolling these waters and routinely harassing fishermen from other countries, reminding them that China isn't subject to the rules. This is their water, just like their official map says.
The United States is accusing China of harassment.
A Filipino fisherman was chased by Chinese Coast Guard speedboats as he made a dash for the shallow waters of Scarborough Shoal last Friday.
A similar dispute is happening on a group of islands a little north of here, where Japan, China, and Taiwan all claim these islands that are surrounded by oil and gas fields.
Taiwan is next, guys. Trust me. With Ukraine going on, with Israel going on, bet your bottom dollar Taiwan's the next place to pop up. Why? I think China's going to wait until the United States get fully involved, i.e., albeit it could be just completely logistically, it could be just completely monetary, it could be actually boots on the ground. One thing's for sure, they're going to wait until the United States has a more depleted reserve than it actually has, militarily speaking, and then I believe China will take Taiwan. That's what I personally think, but I could be wrong. Let me know in the comments what you think, guys, but I honestly think they're just waiting there like a little angry dog patiently waiting to just take Taiwan, all right? Especially when America is going to be involved in other causes.
China will often flex on Japan by sending Coast Guard ships into the water and airspace around these islands. This is their neighborhood, they think these islands are theirs, and they're going to assert that claim, on the map as well as in real life. On China's map, Taiwan is included as a part of China. Even though Taiwan has been independent for decades, China insists that this is theirs.
They want it because of its strategic purpose. If you think about where it's located, geographically, it makes perfect sense. It's a small place, but in terms of a military outpost, if they had the ownership of that island, no one's going to get near China from a Navy standpoint anyway. What a forward projection outpost that would be if they had ownership of it, and you bet your bottom dollar they know that as well. It's the same with Diego Garcia. I believe it's on the horizon there as well. That's why Mauritius and other countries are in dispute of who actually owns the island, and they want it back, and Britain isn't giving it back, and they're renting it to the United States and also because when you look at where it's geographically located, it's a fantastic military outpost to be able to forward project your forces from. So they're just bullying people, wanting this extra dominance for military capability, to enhance that capability.
And if push comes to shove, they've made it very clear that they are willing to claim it back by force. And to that end, this new map includes an addition to the 9-dash line, a 10th dash, a line that drifts dangerously north to encircle the water east of Taiwan.
Yes.
This isn't the first time that a 10th dash has appeared on a Chinese government map, but it is a meaningful moment for the government to just slip in another dash. And it's created a big debate about what this actually means. But one thing that almost all experts agree on is that China's ability to just switch up their ocean claim by adding another dash communicates the original message of using a hand-drawn line as your maritime claim, which is that China feels historically entitled to this region, to this ocean, and they will behave how they choose in their own neighborhood. Especially at a time when its neighbors are partnering with its geopolitical rival, the United States, to surround and encircle China with a large military buildup in the region. The last one I'll mention is a tiny one that's kind of surprising. It's up here where the map claims this river island that should belong to Russia. There was a dispute about this, but 20 years ago, Russia and China agreed to redraw the border like this, giving half of this island back to Russia. But in this map, they claim it once again, and no one is totally sure why.
Very strange.
So this new map out of China is a series of political statements, which arguably every map is. Some of these are worthy of debate, some are wishful thinking, and some are downright aggressive. But one thing is clear, China is now rich and powerful, and motivated to exert its geopolitical vision.
It's only going to get more rich and more powerful within the next 5, 10, 15 years. They are very, very dominant within the world stage, superpower-wise. They have absolutely the potential to take over the number one spot on a global stage. I think a number of things have to happen for that to stop, but I do believe it involves war on a monumental scale, and nobody wants that
in the world. It's a reminder that maps have always been a tool for great powers to express their aspirations, and this map in this modern day is no different.
Wow, that was a fantastic video, guys. I'm not going to lie. Please go show Johnny Harris some love. A fantastic YouTuber, one of my favorite of all time. And, you know, I've never had any problems reacting to his stuff. So thanks personally. I know he's not going to watch this anyway, but we can all be wishful. Guys, like, share, subscribe, drop a comment for the algorithm. And yeah, if you want to support the channel even more, become a member or join the Patreon below. But other than that, thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one.